Hi, my name is Beth Rachel, and I am an intuitive channel, shadow alchemist, energy educator, and multidimensional healer. And I am here to support humanity's spiritual evolution through the alchemization of shadow and embodiment of soul. And I want to talk to you today about anger and resentment. The emotion of anger has often been thought of as taboo, and throughout history and still today. Resentment is compounded anger combined with a feeling of helplessness that sits over time. I believe that anger in and of itself is not bad or wrong. How we express anger can be hurtful to others, and so it is important to express it with care, which I know at times can be hard, especially when we're feeling angry. So I think having a strategy for how we work with our anger is important. First of all, I want to say that anger arises when we are feeling hurt in some way or unheard in some way. It's a symbol to us that in some way or another we feel that our boundary has been crossed. And oftentimes, especially when we have not been allowed to know our boundaries or voice our boundaries, to have our boundaries in our life, anger comes as a result before we are able to come to the words of which is what is actually going on for us. So if you're one of those people that have never been given space, I want to say permission, to have boundaries, whether that was in your family growing up or in different relationships that you've had, you haven't had permission to have your own boundaries, to have your own space, to have your voice be heard, to be seen, to be known as an individual within a group dynamic or a two-person relationship dynamic. It's important for you to learn how to voice your boundaries, to first discover your boundaries, figure out what feels good to you and what doesn't. That's simply what boundaries are. Simply said, not so simply done. Sometimes it takes time to figure out what feels good to us and what doesn't, especially when we've spent a lifetime, perhaps, doing what feels good to others in order to stay safe or in order to stay out of difficult situations, conversations, or interactions or relationships. Being the people pleaser often keeps us out of difficult situations but does not allow us to be a fully expressed individual. And so anger and resentment builds. This is just one aspect of it. However, it is one aspect that can be incredibly helpful for us to stop and figure out what feels good to us and what doesn't, and start establishing boundaries from there. Being able to voice your boundaries, being able to follow through with voicing your boundaries when you feel that they are not being honored or respected. This may also take some time for other individuals around you if it is new. That being said, let's come back to the anger for a moment. If it's become a pattern for you to get angry before inquiring, you're going to have to set a new pattern, and it may need to coincide with taking space by yourself, alone, and getting to know what it is that's going on underneath the anger for you. Where or when did you not feel heard or honored? Were you not hearing or honoring yourself, seeing yourself, or was that not happening within a relationship with another? So this validates the anger. It is a rightful emotion. Now, depending on how deeply you have felt wronged, you may need to actually let some of that anger out. You may need to actually physically release that anger and move it out of your body, out of your vessel. And there are various ways to do this that are contained and safe and don't cause any harm to anyone else. They can make the individual feel a little bit silly, but I think that that's better than others feeling unsafe or the individual themselves feeling unsafe. finding a place that is contained to yell or scream or hit an inanimate object, pillows, soft things like this. Obviously, if you have a punching bag, that's amazing, very helpful. Any way that feels good to you to give it a voice or a movement is going to be helpful to get it out, up and out of the body. Now, the other thing that happens is resentment can form. With resentment, it's not always involving another individual. Sometimes we're resenting ourselves. So sometimes we have to inquire to ourselves about this, and sometimes we need to inquire also to ourselves, but about another individual. What are we getting out of it? Obviously, it's not making us feel good. And in fact, there's a Taoist saying that, being angry or resentful toward another is putting poison in your own cup, which goes along with what I just said, in that moving it out of the body is sometimes very necessary. Well, if you don't know what you're learning from the situation, sometimes it's very hard to let go of it. If you haven't completed whatever contract you have with the individual that you're learning with, or yourself that you're learning, then it can be very hard to let the resentment go. For instance, someone could have treated me very, very poorly, and I'm holding resentment toward them that I'm having trouble letting go of. While underneath that resentment, I have learned certain things, both helpful and unhelpful, that it has taught me things about myself, and it has taught me things about the world, and it has taught me things about how I am evolving as a soul through time and space. So I can choose to receive those lessons from that situation and thus release the resentment. Now, sometimes these situations have taught us things that we don't actually want to know anymore. We don't actually choose to continue to hold close to our space. And so we can also let them go. If what we learned from that situation was how to feel like crap, or that we didn't matter or we weren't important, then we can let them go. We can release that person from helping us to learn that we are no longer choosing to learn, release the situation, release the resentment from our body and from our space. It's important to look at what it is that's still tying us to it. This is what I call a sticky point. Recognize what it is we're getting out of it, the learning or the lesson, whether it's positive or negative. Again, I don't really believe there is one or the other, but however we're relating to it, if we're having that connection to it, whatever we're getting out of it, it's important to recognize that and allow it to be complete so that we can allow the resentment to move. Being that resentment and anger are tied, you may need movement or a voice sound to put to that as well. And that is perfectly fine. And again, just finding the right time and the right space and allowing it to happen, allowing yourself to feel a little bit silly for a little while in order to get that voice out that wasn't allowed to express at the time, or you couldn't figure out how to express at the time, or allowing that movement out where your body didn't feel that it could express at the time, or hasn't figured out or didn't figure out how to express at the time. If you like what I've had to say here today, please take the time to support it, like it. You can find me at bethrachel.com if you'd like to know more about me, my story, and how I support humanity and work with individuals and groups. bethrachel.com, and or you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you so much, and hope you have a beautiful day.